Welcome back to the Long Way Back podcast. I'm your host, Timmy Long. Today, joined by Georgie. Georgie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Timmy.
Good.
And we've got Enda and Quentin here.
Yeah, from the Comeragh Wilderness Academy. I bet to get that right. Sorry, lads. So, Georgie, you actually went down and visited the lads.
I did. That's right. Because when I saw you on Instagram and Facebook, and I thought, God, this sounds really, really interesting. Because you were sort of saying, look, you know, if you are struggling in mainstream education and you happen to be a boy, lad, who just really can't cope with the system, then come and have a look at what we've got to offer. So I thought, right, let's get down there. And I came along, and I have to say,
Down there, Waterford.
this, do you know what my geography, Comeragh, is that, that's
Comeragh Mountains.
Yeah.
Comeragh Mountains, yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Beautiful spot.
Yeah.
And of course you can describe much more about what you do, but I was pretty bowled away with what you had. It's a beautiful setting. It is, it feels like in the middle of nowhere, very well set up. And I mean, I'll let you explain, but it's based on wilderness therapy.
One of you want to explain
yeah.
that a little bit more in depth, what you do down below, the lads.
Wilderness.
What about you?
Yeah.
Sure.
Quentin?
So the wilderness therapy is a model that was kind of came over here from America, where it's been very successful. There's a number of different, in America they call it camps, wilderness road therapeutic camping. It's kind of, there's actually association, there's almost a dozen of them in America. And so there was a seen need for how to help young people with the mental health crisis that's going on here. And initially the school started back, and I think they first purchased some land back in 2009, 10. They're just doing summer camps and different things to get started, getting their name out, getting growing.
And they purchased the one in Ireland.
Yes, they purchased some land and just tried to start what can we do to help young people in Ireland? It was a big cry from the organization at the beginning. And at first they tried kind of a carbon copy of what they did in America, and they found Ireland's a bit different than America. And so for 7 years, we did like short-term camps and summer camps and different things like that. But then just at the beginning of 2023, we opened as an alternative school. And so we're registered with TUSA, the alternative school.
So what's the actual, and do you want to explain to us what the structure of the daily routine is for the lads below?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the whole idea of what we're doing is to introduce them to the whole concept of structure and routine. So I suppose kind of I feel like as well it might be a good idea to just touch on the type of lads we're talking about here. They are lads who generally are living quite chaotic lifestyles. In a lot of different cases, they'll be already expelled from school by the time they come to us. They might be having problems. It can be on the flip side too, that they are struggling with issues to do with autism or ADHD, and all of those things, whichever one it is, result in them having developed a very chaotic lifestyles. So we strive to teach them how to live in a more scheduled kind of way. In the morning, they'll get up at the same time, or we encourage them to get up at the same time every morning. It can take a while for a lad to kind of to get with the program on that, but they get up at 7:15, and then they'll do their morning chores. After their morning chores, they'll go on then to have their breakfast, and all throughout this, they're learning how to do basic life skills. You know, when they're having their breakfast, before they do it, they have to set the table, right? And I try to explain to lads when we're talking about that, if your mum wasn't here and you came down and it was time for breakfast, what would happen? Would the food just appear on the table? No, you're going to have to put it there. And then what are you going to do? You're going to eat it with your hands. No, you can't do that. So you're going to need to have your knives and your forks and your plates and all that.
So you're encouraging them to become more independent and think for themselves.
Yep.
And I should also add, Timmy, that when I went to have a look, when we're talking about bedtime, morning routine, this is in a wood. This is in a woodland. And they have made everything themselves. So the cabins are made by the lads, by you guys. They, even the sort of,
the interesting one for me that stands out is there's no technology.
Well, there's basic technology.
Yeah, but the lads don't have any phones.
That's right.
They don't have any phones. Have they any way to get on the internet?
No.
There's no electricity.
We're living in 2024. Like, that is a big deal for a child.
Yeah.
These guys they don't have a light switch.
Yeah.
Okay, you're guided by the light of the day and the
Candle at night.
Yeah, candle at night.
And do you know in the evening when you're sitting down, like what's the environment like? You have a campfire and the boys are just sitting around having chats. Do they talk about maybe how their day was or how they're feeling?
That's so interesting you bring it up, because and it was described in the beginning of the day how there's a structure and routine at the beginning. The way the day ends is a structure and routine. And we have this special thing called folk mood, which mood is like meeting folk as people, right? And we have a special place in our campsite where they walk out a little path and there's a little fire set. Then in that morning they set the fire, the evening they light it, and they sit around the fire and have a chat.
That's powerful.
And you evaluate the day. This whole reflective practice and professionals talk about, we're teaching them at the school how to reflect in their day. How am I different now than I was this morning? What did I learn? What am I going to do tomorrow? Just helping them make sense of their day. And then hopefully they can start, and amazing, powerful stuff. They start making sense of their lives. They say, they start talking about their lives. It's incredible.
Yeah, and even emotional stuff.
And you know how it is sitting around a fire. I say fire is nature's telly. It just draws you in.
It does.
And then you can go to bed on that piece.
But you know what, right? Did you know a fire, for me, do you know if I'm at home and I light the fire, I get a sense of comfort from the fire.
Absolutely.
If the fire is not lighting, it's like, I don't even actually want to even sit in the front room and watch the telly.
Yeah.
But if the fire is lighting, I feel so comfortable. I don't know, is that something that has been given to me from childhood, because we didn't have heating when we were kids, and the fire was the only thing that would warm us. And now I just want to go back to you there about the structure of the day. So what is the education like for the lads? Like, how do you actually educate them? Because we spoke earlier on there, and you said something to me, or it was you, Quentin, but it was like, I asked you, what's the education model? And you said 90%, 80 to 90% well-being and 10 to 20% education. And that is my view on education for every child. That's how it should be based. So what is the structure to that?
Yeah. So that's kind of, we look at most schools would have like a 95% of their efforts are focused on education, and maybe 10%, 5% is focused on the well-being of the child. So if the child starts struggling emotionally or has some kind of, or kind of comes outside of that box of what you'd call the typical child, they can start to fall behind, and there's no real, there's no real systems in place to be able to help them. So I know you were asking about the education. I guess that's just kind of how, a bit of an illustration how the conventional one works. With us, we would look definitely like 50-50, like that well-being element is just as important, if not more important than the actual academic side. But the academic side is it's student-led and it's experiential. So in a typical school, they open up their school books and they're basically just kind of almost forced to learn whatever's in front of them, whether they like it or not. And a child with ADHD is going to struggle with that, right? If they're not interested in it, they're going to lose focus. And so the student-led approach is we encourage them and we promote them to pursue learning about whatever it is that interests them at the time.
You're actually looking at their strengths, so Georgie.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's the point. Like it's quite, in mainstream schools, very hard to have a student-led system because you've got 30 kids in a classroom, you've got a curriculum you've got to, deliver, all these millions of objectives you've got to achieve. There's a huge amount of pressure on the teachers and obviously on the students as well. This is entirely different. This is trying to get, I guess, I mean, if I'm wrong, let me know, but this is trying to get learners, what we'll call learners, ready to actually be able to fit into a mainstream situation because they're not ready. If their school refusal or they're getting expelled, there's something seriously going wrong. And what you're trying to achieve, from what I can understand, is what's going wrong and what can we do to help? What can you do for yourself to help? And so it's a really kind of special and unusual system and setting, and I noticed it's obviously just for boys or lads, because it's, 12 to 16?
15.
12 to 15. And I was interested to know, in America, this has been running for much longer. Is it all for boys or are there some places for girls?
There are some girls' camps. Yeah.
Okay, so there's possible scope there, maybe in the future that there could be some, because there's a lot of girls as well who have emotional dysregulation and who knows what's going on. Yeah.
Do you know the skills then? Like we spoke about, you're a carpenter by trade as well, and so do a lot of the lads learn on a visual kind of sense with their hands? Is that a big thing below with you? Because I've ADHD and I'm dyslexic, and when I'm working with my hands, I'm carving or turning timber on a lathe or whatever. I could be doing that for 10 hours a day. I wouldn't even know I'm there. Right, but if you put me down and ask me to read a chapter in a book, I will struggle, and that 10 minutes will be like 10 hours because the emotions that's coming up for me, the struggles, even falling asleep, I get tired even just looking at a book. How do the lads work with that? Is it easy for some hours and others just love the practical side of it?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, any of you.
It's. I know exactly how you feel because I have ADHD too.
Okay.
So yeah,
I do too.
You're at a good table, so lads. We're all relating here tonight.
But we find that, and it's interesting, even outside of the scope of ADHD, even if you're looking at, say, autism and stuff, anytime I ask a child with autism, do you think in words or do you think in pictures? They'll tell you they think in pictures in a lot of cases. So they're very visual like that. And they seem to do a lot better with experiential learning. So getting involved with something. When something has a purpose, you're building something. For instance, we were talking there about the structures that they're living in while they're at the school. They're living in tent-like structures where they have beds and all that. They're built by them or whoever came before them. And if ever it comes to a point where they start rotting, they're made of wood and all that, they have a lifespan, they're going to start falling over. The boys will start getting together, making a plan. We're going to need to build a new one. And so they have this hands-on learning experience of building one of these structures. They're learning all kinds when they do that. They're learning mathematics. They're learning graphic design because they do up the plans prior to that. And they're just learning just pretty basic fundamental construction skills.
I'm always banging on and on about multisensory, teaching multisensory. Like, this is multisensory. This is that. What's that expression that I also bang on about? Tell me I'll forget. Show me I may remember. Involve me and I will learn. I will remember.
That made a lot of sense to me when you said that.
It does. And these guys, like, as there's no electricity, the drills are those hand drills. I mean, I don't know much.
I have one of my old toolbox from an apprenticeship. Jesus, I'd have to really root back into the box to find that.
Yeah, you probably don't use it every day, no?
No, geez, I can't remember. I think last time I used it was probably in Foss in fucking 2001 or something.
Yeah, I mean, because everything we all have such an easy kind of access to electricity. What are the other kind of tools and stuff that you use, like the
well, there's a hammer and chisel, a draw knife, a tape measure, often there's a hammer and mallet, but and a saw, just making notches and putting pegs in, and that's how it's all together.
Do you all teach this?
We all learn together, Timmy. It takes, and that's one thing we haven't talked about a lot is the group work. So there's not just one kid there. There's a group of kids. And so we are a big part of the well-being side of it is how to get along with people and the relational side. There's a structure and routine, but then there's also the relational bit. And that's what's really hard for some kids. But some kids are good at that and some kids aren't. Some good kids that come are good at the building side and other kids aren't. And that's fine. We all need to find what we're good at. And that's a big thing. We're trying to give the kids a sense of accomplishment and self-worth that they might not be good at building, but guess what? They can draw the plan like nobody else. Do you know what I mean? They might be able to read a story while the rest of the group's building. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And finding everybody's strengths and building that group work, that community, the sense that we're all here together to make ourselves successful. We're gonna have a dry place to sleep one day, or we're having fun together. So that's a big part.
There's a great sense of accomplishment as well when you build something, and you're using it on a practical basis, on a daily basis.
Or cook something as well. So they have to cook
They've
things.
cooked 2 days. They cook back in it over an open fire, like a barbecue.
Timmy's
everywhere. That was like when I was a kid. I used to go into the forests out towards the Lee Valley, and we'd bring tinfoil and sausages and coke, make a camp. I can imagine, like we done that, and we felt our best lives back then. It was the best times we ever had.
Because that timeless experience of just being. And
I can visualize it now in my head. It's like I nearly can see the leaves on the floor, the little fire, the bit of crack with the lads. I can imagine living your life like that all day long.
But also knowing you're in a safe environment.
Yeah,
as well,
and you're understood.
Really,
and you're not pushed into doing things like the normal education system, stuff that you don't actually even enjoy, that creates a lot of anxiety and stress for you.
But that's actually a good question, because there must be. I mean, I think it was one of the first questions I had for you guys. I'm guessing you get a fair number of neurodiverse students coming to you, and transition is extremely hard sometimes. So you get these kids, they come and they are dropped off by their parents or carers, and then they have to have this transition of sleeping in a cabin, in a woodland, without their phone, without electricity. I'm presuming some of that can be very challenging, or maybe not.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
We don't want to be saying like it's all roses, because
no, of course
it's not. They do find it challenging, and that's why at the beginning it's very important that they make the decision to do this, understanding that it's going to be difficult at times. They're coming here in order to become better people. Things haven't worked out the way it's been so far. But, this is an opportunity where they can get ahead in life. And so they're going to have hard times. They're going to struggle at times. They're going to have to leave things behind. They're going to have to make some sacrifices. But if they understand that from the beginning, that makes it all the more easy. I would dread to think what would happen if we didn't tell them they were going to have to leave all this stuff behind. But they're aware of it.
Tell them the process to enroll, because that's a big part of this, helping that transition.
Yeah. So the process of enrollment, it starts off with we'll get a phone call, or we get an email, and just an inquiry about the school or whatever. And so the first step is basically for us to get to know the child. What's going on with them? What's the kind of struggles he's been through so far? Who is he? And that takes a while. It can take I do that. That's one of my roles there as a family support worker. I might be an hour and a half, 2 hours even, talking to these people before eventually they'll ask us to come visit. And then we'll on the family visit, then we will have our little slideshow. It's not so little, 120 slides, but it's just to give them a comprehensive view of what it's all about.
Yeah, I'd say that's very important, actually. Them knowing, so there's no hidden surprises or shocks, because that knowing what you're going to is really, particularly if you have autism, you really need to know your expectations.
And if you have autism as well, that was something you spoke about, the teamwork stuff. Some autistic kids like working on their own, and it can be a challenge, like working with other individuals. But like one of the biggest things that keeps standing out to me, because of the time we're living at the moment, and kids are so attached to technology and their phones, how do you actually get around a child's mind?
Yes.
Trying to get them, like a family and yourselves, to get them into the school and get them away from the phone and the social media. That must be a challenge.
There must be some who say, no way.
There are. And that's where it has to come, their decision, that they want to help themselves. They know there's something that they need to work on themselves. Every kid comes with a goal. How are they going to change? And then to help others. But it's a slow process. So they have to be willing. But after we visit the family, we get them to come and see it. And they can talk to other kids about their experience of not having a phone. we've already had other kids say, what is it like not having an Xbox? And they joke around about their own entertainment there at the school. And so they can see what it's like, and so they can make an informed decision.
Yeah,
then when they come and you're dealing with all these emotions, I don't have my normal things I cope with. That's where it takes a lot of the staff to kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
Be really understanding, really kind and supportive. But whatever we can do to help them to relax, to know that we're on their side, we're trying to help them. And it's not easy, but we're going to be there.
There's one positive I can see from it anyway. So if a child is willing to give up the phone and the social media and the technology to go there, that means they mean business.
Yeah.
That does mean they mean, you know, because they understand that there's something going on for them. And if they're willing to give up all these things and step outside their prayer groups and everything else, that shows me that this child wants to change.
Yep.
They want to look at themselves. They want to, you know, what about the emotional aspect? I don't know which one of you know will deal with that a little bit more, but the emotional aspect of, right, technology takes a child away from every form of emotion and thinking, right? It takes them away from their thinking, it takes them away from trauma, it takes them away from everything. Okay, you take that away. My child at home, Jay, he always, when I take the phone off him, he says, what am I supposed to do now? I'm bored. You know, how do you deal with, how does it work for the children that are in the school?
Yeah.
Like how do they sit with emotions? Do you walk through emotions? Do you walk through the whole connection between the thoughts and the emotions and the kind of how they're both connected? Is that a process you speak about?
Absolutely. It's a process for the students and it's a process for the staff as well.
Okay.
We're very self-aware, or we really promote self-awareness for the boys and for ourselves as well, you know. I came in there when I started a couple of years ago, and I'll tell you, I've worked through a lot of stuff since then, even just working here. But that's a big part of everything. If you think about their behavioral problems that they're facing currently, you can root that all back to emotions. You know, if you look at a child who's lashing out at his peers, getting in fights, etc., what's going on there? He's getting angry at some point, right? Where's the anger coming from? Normally he doesn't get to find out. He just lashes out. But with us, if he does lash out, what we'll do is every single day, the boys are together. They're always together. I think our two rules are, well, not our only two rules, but two rules we like to say are, what we do it together, and we do it with a good attitude. But if you have two lads butting heads with each other and they have a bit of an argument, we wait for everything to calm down, and then we all gather around together and we have what we call a circle up. And now we're going to talk about it. What was that about? Why did you say that to him? You know, they'll probably say, oh, I was angry. I said, why were you angry? We're going through that whole process of building this kind of self-awareness and building that connection between how I act and how I feel. And I'm not sure what makes it all work, but over time, as they continue to do that, it helps them overcome in a lot of ways that reaction.
Because we were talking earlier as well about trauma, because, you know, it goes back to this idea that there are, see, if you have ADHD, but you've also experienced a lot of trauma in your life, you can often have very similar signs and symptoms as such. There's that Venn diagram of someone with trauma, someone with ADHD. In the middle part, there's so many things that are very, very, very similar. And, you know, that's, some of them may have, I presume, may have had some pretty traumatic events in their lives as well. Is there additional counselling, or do you find actually it's not, you don't feel it's necessary, because actually what you're doing, in fact, this kind of answers my next question about the wilderness therapy. Is this part of wilderness therapy, this group talking, dealing with, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The group work, the positive peer interactions is where we try to keep a 51% majority of a good attitude. Yeah. And there's nothing like your peers telling you it's going to be okay. You get angry, it's fine, talk about it and you'll be okay. So a lot of it, like you were saying, dealing with emotions is through talking.
Yeah.
If you can get them talking, get them to, as Chief Enda said, self-aware, it really helps. Because a lot of kids I find are just all in their head. They're so confused.
Yeah.
And so that's where our teachers, we call them chiefs, is kind of a title of respect instead of Mr. whatever, we still want to keep the respect, is modeling as well. For the teachers say, this is how I'm feeling. And seeing how we play off each other's feelings and just having a word about it. You put a word on something, name it and tame it, you know? And so that's there are cases where they need professional counseling and stuff like that. That's fine. That's probably better in some situations, but sometimes some lads won't sit in a counseling office, right?
Right.
So this is another alternative.
So there is counseling available.
No, on our site, we don't.
Okay, but
we've had kids come out of the group and meet with a counselor every week or something like that, facilitate them stay and enroll.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but you would see that they would have the same benefits that they would get over time as they would get from counselling.
Definitely.
Only it's happened within this kind of group work kind of a structure.
More of a natural setting.
So if you were to describe wilderness therapy, how would you summarize it?
That's a good question. It's a few things. One is the structure routine, the importance of that.
Okay.
One is the relationships, healthy relationships. One is this group work, working together as a group. There's a lot of components that facilitate this. One is the respect, teaching respect.
And presumably being in the wilderness.
That's right. We couldn't do what we did in a city.
Yeah.
You have to be outside where there's a free, and I call it a stimulating environment, but yes, calming. How is that possible? But it is possible in creation.
Trust is a big one.
Trust is exactly.
Trust there, that's what stood out to me there straight away. Is like a lot of these lads are coming from maybe environments where they've probably never trusted anybody based on their environment or based on their upbringing. So they may have struggled to ever have any really trusting relationships or attachments in their lifetime. So when they're going down tea and it's different, and they might tell you to fuck off 1 minute, and they might do that for a week or a month, and then all of a sudden they start realizing that like you're not actually giving them shit or beating the fuck out of them or telling them they're no good and they're worthless. They might say, do you know what? This fucker might be actually a good person, and that's how you build a bond.
That's right.
And that's based on my own experiences. I had a lot of them kind of different experiences growing up as well, based on my own attachments and the stuff that was going on for me, and then coming across people that were actually good to me and then telling them, fuck off, what would you care? Like, it's not to you, you don't know what happened to me, you don't even know me. And then basically they're saying, it's okay, like to me it's okay. And then go ahead, and then you they keep coming back with that nice, gentle approach. As after a while, you say, okay, you can either say, well, this fella ever fuck off, or will you say, do you know what, this fella actually really cares about me. And that's building a trusting relationship.
That's right.
And that's key, especially to someone who's traumatized, somebody who's had a really difficult upbringing. Or even they might have had a great upbringing, but they just felt so disconnected to other people because of the neurodiverse stuff. And that's another key there. Like the family might be the best people on the planet, always cared about the young fella, but he might have just felt different because he had the ADHD or the autism or whatever. And it's about figuring them out. But the trust for me is a massive one. Do you know what you think, Enda?
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. That's something that we've noticed a lot is change seems to happen. You seem to listen to people's advice a lot more when you trust them. And when you have kids that everybody they think, or at least it seems in their life, is against them because they have these behavioral problems, which actually stem from them having a really hard time. And they're aware of that. And now they're getting all this backlash from society, from their school, from their teachers, etc. And it's really hard then to take advice from people who are giving you that backlash. And so, when you start to, I know I grew up that way. I struggled in school a lot. I had ADHD myself. And I also had a lot of trauma. And I was just, you couldn't control me in school. And I was the bad guy.
So based on your own experiences with your own upbringing, right, and this is key here to a lot of stuff, and I'm sure you have your own stuff as well, Quentin. Like when we have our own traumatic experiences in life, we can relate to people like that with the click of a finger because we can feel their emotional pain. And I suppose for me, if I was to be working with these lads like ye, you can base what's going on from them based on your own. Like, you had the ADHD growing up. You both had it, so you can understand what it's like to feel disconnected and ununderstood, not understood in relation to what's going on for you. So it is key, and then you can approach a young person then in a way that's more comforting to them, because you're talking about exactly how they're feeling. You say, how does he know how I feel? And that kind of that brings a connection then as well.
And did wilderness therapy, was that for both of you? Because obviously, Andy, you're from Ireland. Quentin, you grew up in America. Did you both find wilderness therapy and then that helped you? Or was this something you just led, you kind of ended up in? It was just coincidental that do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. For me, like, my dad was a career teacher. Like, he was a teacher, and I hated school. I didn't do good in school. It was dyslexia, and I was pressured in school. Anyway, I'm connected with you about that. Yeah. And
none of us had a good school experience.
And then I did a little bit of tutoring, and I saw how you could turn kids on at a light bulb moment. They get a spark. They learn something. You feel really successful, and they learn something. And by nature, I'm a caring person. I worked in a nursing home for a while because I like taking care of people. And then this opportunity, it was a volunteer position to work at. It was just starting here in Ireland in 2013.
Yeah.
And this guy came over from America and was starting this program. He was telling me, I got so excited because it fit the outdoors was calming. That was my safe space growing up. And then it fit my love for education, to see people learn, and then to see you can take care of them. All those three things fitting together, really what drew me into it. It was very hard to work with these kids, but at the same time, the reward was so incredible. And so that's what's kept me in it.
No, probably has its own points as well. It's like you can,
it is very demanding.
It can like if someone's having a meltdown, if one of the kids are having a meltdown, if they can be quite physical as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You never know what's going to end.
You can get very stressful.
Same in schools, like you can be attacked and bitten and kicked and punched. Yeah.
It's emotionally draining as well. For me, I didn't come into it that way. I came into it through, I guess you could say, the back door. I grew up with all these problems, and I struggled trying to find my way through the mainstream system. And I couldn't. I simply couldn't. I just went down the cracks, as they say. I was one of those people. So I studied for years trying to find, is there something you can do to help people who are struggling that way? And then when I did come across this, and I seen the success rates of the programs back in the States, I was blown away. 85% of these young lads in follow-up studies went on to do quite well in life. That was insane.
That's a high percentage.
Really high.
It flipped it on its head, because if you look at the statistic, the ACEs study, Adverse Childhood Experiences study, those statistics show you that it's the other way around. 80% go on to do very badly. If they have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, they're 20 times more likely to end up in jail, for instance.
I'm going to use a Timmy term. I think that is incredibly powerful.
It is. And what I was going to say at the end is that's perfect. And that's what does happen is prison, drug addiction. But if you have an intervention like Comeragh Wilderness Academy, and kids go there and they're able to get in touch with themselves and understand themselves a little bit more in depth and understand their strengths, because that's what I can see. You're showing them how they learn. If they're in the normal education structure, how are they going to find out their strengths if everything that they're doing is tough or difficult for them? But if you put them into a setting where it's more practical and well-being, you're giving them an opportunity to find out themselves what's good for them. Do you know what I mean? And
turn it around.
Exactly. So they are really, really high statistics in relation to the success rates for a young person. Because I was in homes when I was a kid as well. And I went into a home like it was just for guys. We were all put there by the probation services. We were all destroyed from drink, drugs, all in the courts, probation, everything. And I don't know where a lot of lads are, but I know where a few of them are, and I know where I ended up myself. There's probably a few dead. Like the two lads I knew from Cork were in prison. I don't know where they are now. I don't know if they're dead or alive. You know, my own situation, I could have ended up either way, dead or in prison for life or whatever. But if you have somebody at a young age, that was the first time I went there. Then I went to another place when I was 16. I went to France to a drug treatment centre.
Wasn't it? Mainly football?
Oh, that was a farm.
Oh, farm. Yeah.
It was a farm. I worked on a farm for 2 years, and I fed pigs and chickens, and
Wow.
there was no rehabilitation. It was a different language. There was a language barrier for me, so I couldn't understand what was going on. But the practical side of it, I was taken from the environment where all my problems were, and with my mother, and my mother was very unwell with her mental health, and with education and guards and courts and stuff. And I was put into this setting. Things changed.
Did it help?
It definitely helped while I was there, but when I came home, I didn't have any supports. I had no supports, and I went back at it, and I went at it for another 12 years, flat to the mat, where life could have ended at any moment because of my behaviours and through the drinking drugs.
That's quite a good point, though. So if when these students come to you, and is there some kind of continuation that you offer once they leave, like a continued conversation? How does that work so that we don't end up like this, where everything's peachy and then we go back to where we came from and it all falls apart again?
Yeah. So a big part of the program is the whole where the kid came from, the family work, support work, and that's his main thing is what can the parents do? How can the parents change and adapt to this child that they have? So there's things that they want to implement. Maybe a routine helps. Maybe having less screen time, whatever. The parents working on their own self-awareness, that they're not shouting at their kid, and escalating things. Learning how to keep things calm. Learn how to reflect with the child before they go to bed. Just having a simple conversation, how was your day, can make a big difference for a kid. That their parent knows them.
And actually cares.
And actually cares. Because the parents actually do care, they just don't know how to connect. And that's what these kids need, is a connection.
That's so true.
And so we're trying to help the family learn how to connect with their kids. But then, and the other big part of this school is we're trying to give them tools that they can value. And that's why the program's a year, 2 years. So they learn the value of structure and routine, the value of cleanliness, the value of being kind to somebody. And then, so once they leave, they graduate. We will maintain contact for up to 6 months or whatever, give them a call once a month or whatever, but they're always welcome to come back. And the amount of people that have come, even for a short term, that come back just randomly, say, hey, I want to see the place again. That place-based connection. And they love it, It's and like, they see that, and we can't chase everybody down that's been through, but when they come back and want to see it again, it's really powerful.
It sounds like a really, really powerful environment as well. This might be a really silly question, right? But in Ireland we probably have the worst weather, I'd say ever, because I'd say it rained for about 9 months there, coming into May this year. How do you actually deal with that in a practical sense on site and living in kind of self-made structures?
Not a silly question. It's just living. The reason I'm asking the question now is because I'm trying to design a structure in my head and how it would work with the mad weather we have back here.
It's like every part of life, isn't it? There's always parts that are unpleasant, and that's the same thing. We're kind of trying to help them to adapt to whatever life throws at you. So we do have rain. There's no doubt about it. And we probably don't have any less rain than you guys have here. We're kind of in the mountain there. But it's how you respond to it. How do you respond to having rain? Well, one thing you can do is you can put on a raincoat, and you can get on with it. And you have your sunny days too. It's not only rain. You have your sunny days too. But they're going to experience hardship in life all throughout life, and they're going to experience difficult things and unpleasant things. And now is the time to give them the opportunity to learn how to deal with that.
And you're building their resilience as well. You're building their self-made resilience.
The big thing about that is they have control of their attitude. Nobody can change my attitude except for myself. I can be influenced, but I can choose to be okay when it's raining and accept that, learn to accept it's raining, put a raincoat. it's going to be harder, but we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And with the structure, like for a meal, we spend over an hour eating a meal, because there's the eating, then there's the sharing, and a time of chat after the meal. So with the structure, it's only a couple hours in the morning and afternoon that we're out in the elements. And then, it's having the protection. There's no such thing as bad weather, as bad preparation, right?
Even the social side of it seems to be very, very helpful, if that's the right word, because a lot of autistic kids, the social side, and the people with ADHD, I wouldn't have been very social myself up to a few years ago, when I had really to kind of work on myself. I had to understand why I wasn't social and why I liked my own company more than other people's first. And then I had to find a way to be able to sit with people without feeling anxious or socially anxious, and that's something that, like, it's sticking out here when you're sitting down having food for an hour, like, whoa, and having to look at someone in the eyes, like, Jesus Christ, I couldn't have done any of these things before. But when you see a transition of a young person, and I'm saying even yourselves in that, with both of you having the ADHD, like, I can see a little bit with you, like that you kind of, like, you've had your own experiences down through the years, and you have a lot to maybe offer a lot of the lads in relation to your experience with addiction. So you're able to kind of guide them as well. Do you have many lads down there that might have addictions to maybe alcohol or drugs by the time they get in there? Are they actually acceptable?
Almost, if you were to take it as in regards to calls we get, because we have 5 lads there at the moment, and I don't think any of them have had any major problems, but have had, maybe there might have been some who had the beginnings of problems. But the calls we're getting are just, it's crazy. Now it seems like when I was a young fella, it was hard enough to get harder drugs, but now they're able to get it at a much younger age. I'm hearing so much now about them being able to get their hands on vapes, and I don't know, having like all sorts in the vapes, not just like nicotine now. There's all sorts of other stuff in there as well.
The THC vapes, you can buy them in these head shops.
Yeah. And they're very strong, they're very strong. But if where you have trauma, you're going to have addiction eventually. I'd say.
Exactly, and at least you're well tuned into being able to manage this stuff as well with the lads below.
Unless you can get intervention, which is kind of one of the reasons we do this podcast, is trying to find other ways to comfort ourselves, or to like, this feeling of numbing. I think that the pleasure you get from drugs and alcohol, this sort of, if there are other ways to replace that, that's what we're trying to
and there's no better way than the fucking wilderness, let me tell you. That'll teach you how to live, like, that'll bring you back to the basics of life. Can
I ask a practical question? So if I was, let's say I'm a single mum, and in a very, very low income household, if any income at all, how would I be able to afford to send my child, who is a school refuser, who is starting to dabble in drugs, and I think this is a brilliant idea, how would I be able to afford to send my child to you?
Trying to answer it. Okay, so that's definitely a big deal. We don't want to exclude anybody from having this opportunity. I would say that if we look at it in terms of how much it actually costs to enroll a student for the year in the school, there's no way my mum could have paid for that.
Right.
So we have set up our fee, but we still have to pay the bills too, so you've kind of got that bit of a balancing act to do. We do have a donor base, which will help support those from lower income families. And so we basically do a means assessment. And for those who can afford it, please do. It just helps support it for those who can't. And for those who can't, we will help. There are measures in place for financial assistance.
So this is a good point actually to say this. So that your donors are American donors, and there is a sort of Anabaptist background to it, which I know that word can freak people out, because It's not something that's hugely common here in Ireland. You know,
Anything to do with any form of religion freaks people
yeah,
out.
Absolutely.
But it's not your camps aren't like the school is not based on a religion, is it? That's like
Well, and I think it's important to hear that you aren't expecting people to come to your camp and conform.
Yeah.
Because you have, from what I understand, you've had multiple different kind of religions and a variety of cultures. But what you ask for is respect.
Yeah.
That's your big thing.
Tolerance.
Yeah.
So even though tolerance and respect, so even though the donors are from an Anabaptist community in America, what they're doing, from all I can see, is they're saying the model that I gave you earlier of someone who couldn't afford to send their child to you, they couldn't afford the fees. What you're saying is these donors can actually pay. Am I right in thinking up to 80% of the fees?
Yeah.
Which is huge.
unbelievably huge, yeah. And that's amazing.
And you once said to me that what you would expect is bare minimum would be the equivalent of child benefit. Is that right? Which I think is.
So how can somebody contact you, lads? If there's a mother or father listening to this, how do they contact you?
Yeah, they can go onto our website. So that's www.wilderness.ie, and they can go to the contact page if they want to just fill it in there. And our phone number is there as well. My mind's gone blank with our phone number.
Yeah, it'll be on the page. It'll be on your website anyway.
Yeah, it's on.
Website.
Yeah, and we have a Facebook page there as well. So if you go onto Facebook, just type in Comeragh Wilderness Academy and we'll pop up there as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Quentin, listen, it's been a pleasure to have both of you here. And thanks for travelling down here
No problem.
as well. And
Pleasure
hopefully
to
I
meet
might
you.
get down there at some stage to have a look at the place as well.
Yes, you're more than welcome anytime.
You'd
man.
love all the woodwork.
Might bring Jay down there and try
Bring
and
your family,
start.
whatever.
Yeah, telling him if he doesn't fucking put that phone away, he might be going down for a trip.
He's very
Mightn't
good
be
at
a bad-
boxing, don't forget. He's not
He's a good,
just.
he's a good old boxer. Yeah,
I
he's.
think it might be yourself that won't be going home.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
do you know what? If I go down there, I know I won't go home.
The amount of
because
parents that say, I want to stay here.
I'd be out. There'd be days there. I'd be wishing that I lose the phone. You know, because the phone gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks to everybody at home for listening. And if there's anybody been affected by anything that we spoke about tonight, or somebody that has a child that may benefit from what the lads are doing in Comeragh Wilderness, you can contact them on their contact details. But we'll also have it on the link on the bottom of the description on the page. Tony will have it there. So listen, thanks again to everybody and the lads for coming down, and Georgie and Tony. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Timmy from the Long Way Back podcast. God bless. Bye-bye.